The night on bed, I said no to my husband. He didn't touch me. He didn't even move. And I had never been scared of quiet before that night. My name is Sarah. I was 25 years old, 3 children, a farmhouse in rural Pennsylvania that smelled like wood smoke and dish soap, a husband named Eli who had never once raised his hand to me. But I was scared of him anyway. That night in February, I had been awake since before 4 a.m. The youngest was sick, fever that wouldn't break. I had spent the day cooking, washing, managing the older 2, and by the time the house finally went quiet, I had nothing left in my body. Eli came to bed. He reached for me in the dark. I put my hand on his arm and I whispered, "Not tonight. I'm exhausted. Please." He stopped. Then, nothing. He turned his back to me and lay there like a wall. Nothing. Not even a sigh. Just his back in the dark. I lay there wide awake, telling myself it was nothing. It was not nothing. Morning came and Eli sat at the table and ate breakfast without once looking at my face. Not angry, not cold, just gone. Like I wasn't there anymore. He spoke to the children. He did not speak to me. Not that day, not the next. By day 4, I was scared to make a sound in my own kitchen. Every time he walked through the door, I watched his face before I said a word. I had grown up in this world my whole life. Nobody had ever said it plain. What it actually costs a wife to say no. I was about to find out. On the 5th day, my mother came. She walked in through the back door, set bread on my counter, and watched me the way mothers do when they already know something is wrong but are waiting to see what you will admit. She didn't ask directly. That was never how it worked. She just stood there until the silence made me look at her. Then she said, "Sarah, is everything well between you and Eli?" I looked at my mother, the woman who had held me through everything, and I lied straight to her face. "Yes, Mama, everything is fine." She nodded slowly. Then she picked up her basket and walked toward the door and said it, quietly, like it cost her something. A wife who pulls away from her husband doesn't just lose his warmth. She loses everything attached to it. She left without looking back. I stood in that kitchen alone, and I understood, not with my head, but somewhere deeper, that my mother hadn't come on her own. Someone had sent her. And she was not only the first. I didn't know it yet, but by the following week, 3 more women would show up at my door, every one of them carrying something: food, bread, pie, and something else underneath all of it. The first one came on a Tuesday. Eli's cousin, Rebecca. She showed up with a pot of soup and her youngest on her hip, and she talked about everything except the reason she was there. The weather, the price of flour, how her husband's back had been giving him trouble. I poured her coffee, and I listened, and I waited. She stayed almost 2 hours. And right at the door, right when I thought she was leaving without saying anything, she turned around and looked at me with something that wasn't quite pity and wasn't quite warning. It was both. "Sarah, Eli is a good man. Good men still have needs. You understand what I mean?" She didn't wait for an answer. She just walked out and got in her buggy and left. I stood at my door watching her go. My hands were shaking slightly, and I didn't fully understand why. It wasn't what she said. It was how she said it. Like she was reading from something. Like those words had been handed to her before she knocked on my door. The second woman came Thursday. My neighbor Anna, older than me by 15 years. She brought a pie and stayed less than 30 minutes, and said almost nothing the entire time. But before she left, she sat down across from me at my table, the only one of them who actually sat, and she looked at me directly and said, "I refused my husband once, twice. The third time I refused him, my own father came to this house and sat in that chair you're sitting in right now and told me I was bringing shame on my family." She paused. "I just want you to know what the road looks like. That's all." I didn't say anything. There was nothing to say. She picked up her empty dish and left, and I sat at that table for a long time after the door closed. Her father had come. Her own father. The third woman was different. She wasn't family. She wasn't a neighbor. She was older, 60s maybe. A woman named Clara from the far end of our district, who I had spoken to maybe 4 times in my life. She brought nothing with her. No food, no dish, no excuse. She just knocked, and when I opened the door, she said, "Can I come in for a minute?" It wasn't a question. She sat down. She folded her hands on my table, and she looked at me the way very old women look at you when they have decided to spend something they have been saving for a long time. Then she said, "I knew Eli's mother. We were close." She stopped for a second. His father used to do the same thing. Go quiet for weeks. She told me once she got so desperate for him to just talk to her that she stopped saying no altogether. Clara looked down at her hands. Eli watched his father do that his whole childhood. He didn't learn that silence on his own. I didn't say anything, but inside I kept thinking, why are they here? 3 women in 1 week, all of them talking about my husband, all of them acting like what happens between me and Eli in the dark is somehow their business. Clara barely knew me. Rebecca hadn't visited in months. And yet here they all were, in my kitchen, drinking my coffee, warning me. Someone had sent them. Someone had sent them. I didn't know who yet, but I knew it wasn't their idea. Clara stood up without waiting for me to respond. At the door, she stopped and said, "I'm not here to tell you what to do, Sarah. I'm here because nobody told his mother, and I have regretted that for 30 years. She left. And that night, for the first time since February, Eli spoke to me at supper. Not warmly, not unkindly either. He just looked up from his plate and said my name. Just my name. And somehow that was worse than all 11 days of silence put together. Because I knew what it meant. He wasn't waiting anymore. That night at supper, I couldn't stop thinking about Clara's words. Eli ate quietly across from me. The children talked, pushed food around their plates, asked for more bread. And Eli just sat there, calm, patient, like a man who had already decided how this ends and was simply waiting for me to arrive at the same place. After the children were in bed, I washed the dishes alone. Eli came and stood in the doorway behind me. He didn't say anything for a long moment. Then, "Rebecca came by this week." He said it like a statement, but it wasn't a statement. I kept washing the dish in my hand. I didn't turn around. I knew what he was doing. He wasn't asking about Rebecca. He was telling me he knew exactly who had been in his house and what they had seen. That the women hadn't just come to warn me. They had come to watch me and report back. I just said, "I know." He stood there a moment longer, Then he went to bed. I stood at that sink long after the water went cold. And I kept coming back to one thing. How did Rebecca know? She had shown up at my door with soup before I had told a single person what was happening inside this house. I thought about it for a long time, and then I remembered. The morning after I refused Eli, before I even came downstairs, he had been outside for nearly 2 hours. I assumed he was doing the milking. Rebecca's farm sits 10 minutes down the same road. He hadn't just been doing the milking. He had gone to Rebecca first, before the silence even started. And I understood then how it worked. In our community, a husband whose wife refuses him doesn't just have a marriage problem. He has a spiritual problem. And a spiritual problem belongs to everyone. So he goes to family first, quietly, the way it has always been done. And the women come, not to help you, to bring you back in line before it reaches the bishop. Because once it reaches the bishop, it is no longer quiet. It becomes a congregation matter. Your name gets spoken in rooms you are not in. Your children start coming home from school with something different in their faces. The women coming to my kitchen with food and warnings. That wasn't kindness. That was the last soft step before everything got hard. And Eli knew exactly how many steps there were, because his father had walked them before him. 3 days later, the bishop's wife came. Her name was Miriam. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and soft hands, and a way of making you feel like a child who had done something wrong, without ever saying so directly. She brought cookies. She asked about my children. She looked slowly around my kitchen, the way you look around a room when you are checking something. Then she sat down and folded her hands and said, "Sarah, a home that is divided doesn't stay standing. You know that." I nodded. Eli is a respected man in this community, a patient man. Whatever is happening between you two, it needs to be set right before it becomes something larger than your kitchen. Before it becomes something larger than your kitchen. I understood exactly what that meant. It meant the bishop already knew. It meant this had already moved outside my house, without my permission. It meant I was no longer just a wife having a hard week. I was already a problem that needed to be managed. Miriam left the cookies on my table and said goodbye warmly, like she had just stopped by for a pleasant visit. I sat with those cookies in front of me for a long time, not eating them, just looking at them, thinking about how something so small could feel so much like a warning. That night, Eli came to bed and reached for me in the dark, and something in me had finally had enough. "Eli." He stopped. "I need to say something, and I need you to actually hear it." He didn't respond, but he didn't move either. "What happens in this room is between you and me. That is it. It does not belong to Rebecca. It does not belong to Anna or Clara or the bishop's wife. It does not belong to this community." Silence. "You went to Rebecca the morning after, before I even came downstairs. You sent women to my kitchen to watch me and report back to you. And you are standing there acting like I am the one who broke something." He sat up slowly, and for the first time in weeks, he actually looked at me. Not through me, at me. A wife who refuses her husband brings the community in herself. That is how it works, Sarah. That is how it has always worked. I looked right back at him, and I said, "Then something is wrong with how it works." He didn't answer that. He lay back down and turned away. and the room went quiet again. But it was a different quiet this time. Not his quiet. Mine. For the first time in that house, I was the one who had said the last word, and I was the one who had chosen the silence that followed it. He never went to Rebecca again after that night. I don't know what stopped him. Maybe he saw something in my face that told him the next step would cost him more than the silence already had. Maybe he understood, for the first time, that the woman lying next to him was not going to break the way his mother had. The community pressure didn't disappear overnight. The bishop's wife came one more time. I poured her coffee. I listened. And when she finished, I looked at her and said, "Thank you for coming, Miriam. I'll take care of my marriage myself." She left without finishing her coffee. And nobody sent anyone to my kitchen after that. I want to be honest with you. Things between me and Eli didn't become perfect after that night. They didn't even become easy. But something had shifted that could not be shifted back. He had shown me the whole system, the silence, the women, the warnings, the pipeline straight to the bishop. And I had looked at all of it and stayed standing. That was the thing his father never taught him. What to do when she doesn't break.